Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're reviewing Star Trek Ascendancy from Gale Force 9. A 4X strategy game set in the Star Trek universe whose base box is for 3 players, with expansions allowing you to add other players. The Star Trek universe itself needs no introduction, but for those who are unfamiliar with what a 4X game is, the X's stand for Explore, Expand, Exploit, and Exterminate. It's an acronym used for complex strategy games that have more ways to win the game rather than just outright warfare. In Star Trek Ascendancy's case, the game winner is the first player to attain 5 Ascendancy tokens, highlighting them as the most ascendant and dominant force in the galaxy. Or, if you're feeling particularly bloodthirsty, there's still the old-fashioned player elimination model where you eliminate the other players by seizing their homeworlds and destroying their fleets. But in larger games, that can mean an awful lot of players that you need to eliminate. The base game has 3 factions: Romulan, Federation, and Klingon, and has 3 exploitative resources: production, research, and culture. Whilst culture is essentially the game winner, the other 2 resources, production and research, are vital for building fleets and upgrading technology. The game is won in 2 ways. The first player to reach level 5 Ascendancy, where 5 culture tokens are swapped for 1 Ascendancy token at a time, for a winning total of 5, or Galactic Domination, in which you have eliminated all your rivals. Every player starts out on their homeworld at least 18 inches away from other players, with a resource node of each colour, and from there they begin their exploration of the cosmos with their starting ships. In most cases, players will enter and exit warp, and depending on the space lane dice result, the distance of the next system is decided. On result of a 2, 3 or 4, you get an equivalent space lane and attach it to your home system, along with an undiscovered system and an exploration card. Newly discovered systems will either have planets capable of various resources or space phenomena, whilst although hazardous, can lead to a great way for players to farm research on their turn. If you draw a planet, and provided that the planet isn't already inhabited, players can then colonize, develop, and garner resources in subsequent turns to add to their economy. This is complicated, however, by an exploration card. In some cases, the drawn exploration card will mean that the planet has a warp-capable civilization that you will need to conquer first, or hegemonize if you are the Federation. Or it may be a crisis that will endanger your ships, a pre-warp civilization that you cannot touch if you're the Federation, or a nice little unexpected bonus of research or resources depending on the card drawn and the episode it refers to, such as the Guardians of Forever from Star Trek the original series, giving you immediate free upgrade, or Encounter at Farpoint, allowing you to immediately colonize the planet. Finally, there are cards that propel players into sudden engagement with each other, such as Q, punitively punting your ship across the quadrant, or a lost colony being discovered somewhere in the far reaches of the galaxy that you now feel the need to both reach and defend. Which brings me to my favourite mechanic in this game: map development. Any system that has only one space lane attached to it is fluid, in that it can be rotated around the home system a full 360 degrees. However, as soon as a second space lane is attached to it, it becomes less mobile and the map of the galaxy starts to take place, and both you and your rivals creep that much closer to each other. As soon as your system has 2 or more other systems connected to it, it becomes fixed in place and is a permanent fixture. This is quite sneaky in that it gives opposing players the opportunity to decide what second system to connect to one of your floating territories and permanently affix your map to a position that suits them, or deflects you towards a rival. This, in my experience, turned out to be a great way of flanking players who bank on turtle strategies and evading bottlenecks. That said, systems have a finite amount of space lanes that can be attached to them, and in one particular match I was able to preempt my friend Jay's Federation fleet, exploiting my left flank by ensuring that my most exposed system had the maximum amount of lanes connected to it prior to Jay being able to reach it and connect with it himself. The other aspect is warp. When ships are at warp, they are slightly taken off the board and can reappear again anywhere on the board at the player's discretion depending on the amount of warp tokens used. One warp token means a ship or a fleet can travel to one system distance away. 2 warp tokens, 2 systems distance, and so on. So this means that any player with sufficient warp tokens can engage in battle in a border dispute nearly anywhere on the board almost instantaneously. This has led to some pretty intense moments where a fairly sizable battle fleet atop a stack of warp tokens is sitting off the board awaiting deployment, leaving all rival players guessing as to where it is headed and whose colony is about to be invaded. Ship production and research is streamlined, as is combat and turn order. There's no complication to these processes, and that makes this game excellent, as it allows players to focus on strategy within the game rather than focusing on arduous administration and ensuring that your entire economy, war fleet, and strategy is balanced, such as in more complex games like Twilight Imperium 4th edition. One ship costs 1 production and is built in 1 turn, and that one ship is capable of attacking other ships, invading planets, conducting research, and colonizing systems. If you've at least 3 ships, you can make a fleet. There's no faffing about with 3 or 4 different styles of ship to get basic administrative work done, such as in TI4. Research made on ships affects all ships, so there's no being bogged down in just upgrading one specific class or type of ship like you would see in other 4X games. Trade itself is also simple in that each player has 3 trade agreement cards that they can swap with other players. And once you engage in combat with that player, the trade agreement is broken. There's no complex economics or mechanics to it. You simply agree to get a few extra production value tokens at the end of your turn, depending on the card you hold with your neighbours. And this, again, I found in comparison to TI4, is a good thing early game, as it allows you to invest early and just have your economy nailed down for the late game, where you can focus on shipbuilding and winning the game. Star Trek Ascendancy is a very streamlined game, which allows you to just get on with it and get to the good stuff. It's streamlined in its mechanics, but also lore-wise, in that all players who play this game are generally Star Trek fans or will have enough of a passing knowledge of Star Trek that their chosen faction will easily suit their playstyle. It will also allow them to have a fair idea of what their rivals are like and what they're capable of depending on the factions they chose. For example, the Klingons are aggressive, the Romulans are sneaky, and the Federation excel in research, and so on. Because of the intellectual property involved, players, and especially fans of Star Trek, will find it very easy to engage with the atmosphere and tone of the game very quickly. The exploration cards bring in great little aspects of fan service to the game and allow players to supplement standard game chat with memories of their favourite episodes or gently taunt other players, such as the Klingons, for not being bloodthirsty enough. I've had some great Star Trek nerd-out sessions with my friends in playing this game, and I am proud to have convinced at least 2 other players in my time in playing Star Trek Ascendancy to promise to either properly watch Star Trek for the first time or to give Star Trek Voyager another chance. It is also one of the best games I have ever played in introducing players to 4X style games. As part of the review, we had the opportunity to play this game in convention conditions, and one of our players at that convention was someone called Adriana, someone who was relatively new to the board gaming hobby. We initially worried that she might find the game overwhelming, but that was because we approached it as old TI4 veterans, worried that she'd be daunted by the multiple complexities inherent in 4X games. Star Trek Ascendancy, however, is quite literally the polar opposite to TI4, in that its streamlined mechanics, known lore, and straightforward economy and engine building meant that she was almost with us fully on the second turn, and more than capable of bringing her Patak Romulans to bear on my poor peace-loving Klingons' left flank in our match, rather than still struggling with basic rules 6 hours in what will be a TI4 game. I personally have had a blast playing this game, as I am a big fan of the franchise, and that Star Trek Ascendancy cuts to the chase when it comes to the good stuff in 4X games, such as combat, empire building, and galaxy-wide war. It also, however, doesn't overstay its welcome either, as game length is dictated generally by the amount of players within the game, with game length roughly being 1 hour per player. Even in long gaming sessions, I have not felt too jaded, as the map develops in such a way that it's easy for players to spot who the leading player is and to conspire to undermine them in order to win the game. The production and economics in the game are such that it's very easy to build up a new fleet every round of combat in the late stage, so that combat is consistent, fun, and players who lose fleets to poor dice rolls don't feel permanently out of the game, as reinforcements are always incoming. The only criticism I would have is that the 3-player game is too brief. On one occasion, where due to lucky system placement, our friend Jay was able to run away with the game early on by farming culture at an exorbitant rate ahead of Tony and myself, as we had focused on each other and let his economy run unchecked in the early stage of the game. By the time we had refocused our efforts away from each other and started connecting to his system, it was too late. Jay, having been left to his own devices, had prioritized research and culture nodes, and our combined fleets were not only no match for his advanced ones, but wouldn't be able to sufficiently destroy enough of his culture nodes in time to prevent game victory. Regardless, as I enjoyed the game so much in our first few play sessions, I treated myself quickly to the Cardassian expansion to bring the game up to 4 players, and immediately found the game much more balanced. As players are able to keep each other in check a lot easier in a 4-player game, because if 2 players end up in a protracted war with each other, the other 2 will still compete and naturally balance each other out. A higher player count also allows for more trade agreements, which means more production, which means stronger economies earlier on, which in turn leads to a much better quality game for all involved. So to sum up, Star Trek Ascendancy is an excellent game in the 4X genre that is very accessible to all, but I'd be sure to pick up an extra expansion when I buy it, just to ensure that I play this game at its best. As always, this is Sean from The Lucky Roll. If you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And a big thank you once again to Gale Force 9 for this review copy. And until next time, this is Sean, signing off.